Welcome to Real Estate Radio Live, an informative and engaging hour discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate. Your host, Joe Cucchiara, provides you with insight and guidance on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate. He also offers real estate tax management
through Friday from 3 to 4, the only live real estate radio related show in the entire Bay Area. And you could tune in and listen to us a couple different ways. One is on the radio at KDOW 1220 AM. You could also listen to us live online, and if you want to do that anywhere, you could access that at kdow.biz. That is kdow.biz. Listen live online. But most importantly, download the podcast. That's what we'd love to do. That way you could listen to the show whenever it is convenient for you. We realize that not everybody can listen from 3 to 4. So a couple different ways. You go to iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, or you could just easily go to our website at reradiolive.com. You could download the podcast and follow us anywhere. The show is focused on real estate. The objective is education and information. So for the last 4.5 years, continue to do the same thing. Our goals here are to provide you with great guests, content information. A great guest like I have today I'll introduce in just a minute, with the objective and the goals to really help you, the consumer, make wise financial decisions in and around your real estate. So whether that's buying, selling, financing, building, decorating, investing, it doesn't matter. We will help you do that. It's a live show, so we love your calls and interactions. A couple different ways you could communicate with me and my guests during the show. One is the toll-free number, 800-516-1220. Also have a live text line during the show, 408-838-9060. And again, for those that are listening to the podcast, that's the best way to communicate with us, 408-838-9060. Let me invite my guest in, Mr. Matt Fuller. He's with San Francisco Modern Condos team at Zephyr Real Estate. Matt, good to have you here today.
Thanks so much, Joe. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. And what I'd love about what we're going to talk to you about today is the San Francisco market. A lot of stuff going on in San Francisco for sure. We could do a whole week on San Francisco. And then just to focus on, the condo market, but also you guys also deal with residential real estate, the single family as well, I realize. But kind of the condo market, what's going on. You and I were talking a little bit about what shapes, how the shape of that market's taking over the last couple of years. So we're going to talk about a lot of different things in and around the San Francisco market. But let's get started. Maybe you could tell listeners a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got into real estate, and then what your primary responsibilities are day to day.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually come from a technology background. I worked for Apple as an intern in college, and the only thing I wanted to do when I graduated was work for them, even though this was back in the days of Spindler and everyone was jumping ship. So I did that, and I went to work for Apple and absolutely loved it until I didn't. And my husband and I moved out here in 2000 because we wanted to become parents. Uh-huh. And when we were going through the adoption process, I was thinking about, what do I want for my next job? And the only hard criteria was around travel. Uh-huh. Since I became a parent, it was really important to actually be a parent and go to the games and do all of those things. So it was the flexibility around real estate that really attracted me to it. And about a year after I started, partnered up with Britton Jackson. She's the Jackson and Jackson Fuller. Okay. And she'd been doing it for about a year and a half before I had started. And we teamed up, and we have been a team of 2 until last year, actually, when we doubled the size of the team to 4. Oh, great. And have focused exclusively on San Francisco and San Francisco real estate.
Very good. Yeah, and there's all kinds of stuff going on in San Francisco. But let's start by giving us a little update on the market. What's going on in San Francisco?
I don't know.
Other than prices going through the roof, rents going through the roof, you can't find a place to live or do business. Other than that,
I came to your show today with some groundbreaking economic news. This theory is crazy. You've probably never heard it before. Okay. But when there is too little supply and too much demand, prices rise.
Oh my gosh!
So
wow.
I know I'm stepping out on a limb. It seems to surprise our politicians on a continual basis that if we don't make enough of something, no one can afford it. Yeah. So the San Francisco market is very seasonal, and kind of November, December, January is our quiet season. Mm-hmm. So once the Super Bowl comes and goes, and that's typically when our market starts to pick up. So
Okay.
we're in this very interesting pause where there's data points scattered here and there, but you can't quite tell if it's a pattern or if it's just a lot of really good stories.
Yeah. It's amazing to me. I mean, I spend a fair amount of time up in San Francisco, and I have share some season ticket holders with the Giants. I love baseball, so I'm up there a lot. Boy, just that area alone, seeing what AT&T Park did to San Francisco and that whole industrial area and a lot of that. I'm guessing that the high-tech market, the strength of the business market is just, and the fact that many of these companies want to be in San Francisco, right, is just really driving it to the means that you're talking about today and the demand. Is there still really just a super shortage on housing in general? I mean, I know we're all trying to play catch up, right? The builders, and you're going to talk a little bit about high rise too, but is it still a catch up game?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we're underbuilt in San Francisco by thousands of units. How many thousands of units depends on, your politics and who you want to ask. But we're underbuilt, and we have been underbuilt for a very long time. And the conversations around what we will build and where we will build are really challenging conversations in San Francisco. And kind of all of this goes back in the 1950s and 60s, long before you and I. They wanted to, for example, build a freeway through Golden Gate Park. And so neighborhood activism, has its roots in some incredibly good causes. I mean, thank you for thank you for stopping a freeway in Golden Gate Park. But I kind of also feel like that pendulum has swung like way too far. Okay. And so there's this attitude that any development or change of any type will ruin San Francisco, and we need to step back and say, okay, we're going to change. Some areas will become more dense. It's going to be a different city, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're building a freeway through Golden Gate Park. Right. So, building for the future and destroying what we have is this very intense tightrope we often walk in San Francisco. And we're going to have to find a way as a city to come to terms with the fact that people want to live here. It's a beautiful place. Good point. And if we're truly going to be a welcoming city that lives up to our ideals, then that's going to mean the city's going to have to look different, and we're going to have to increase our density, and we're going to have to make room. Because that's the first thing you got to do if you're going to be a welcoming place. Well,
I think it's well said, the way as you articulate that, Matt, because it's we all are in that frame of mind, right? When we find a place we really love, we like to live, we like to visit, we're like, okay, we're good, no more. Let's just keep it the way it is. And that's all practical. That's just not realistic.
So that's absolutely it. Like, it's perfect for me. Right. Let's stop. Right. But one of the other interesting shifts as San Francisco in some ways becomes a bedroom community to Silicon Valley, you've seen this interesting shift in the center of gravity heading south. Right. And our most desirable neighborhoods used to be, Pacific Heights or Nob Hill. And those are absolutely still incredibly valuable and desirable neighborhoods. The houses there and the lot sizes and the things that make them unique are never going to change. But people will actually look at the south side of town first because it cuts 20 minutes, 30 minutes off of their commute. So, I have buyers now who say, I want to live in Noe Valley. And if we can't find something in Noe, then let's talk about Pacific Heights. Okay. Or let's talk about, some of these other areas. And you've also seen, for a period of time, some of our most affordable, and let's put that in air quotes, housing was on the southern edge of the city. So as the center of gravity has shifted there, those have been communities that have really been impacted by the lack of affordable housing. And you've seen neighborhoods where, honestly, like blue-collar neighborhoods like the Excelsior, where, when I started, it was actually the very first house I sold was in that neighborhood, and I want to say it was like $349 for a single family. And a single family in that neighborhood, $1 million.
Yeah, that's amazing. Have you seen the? We'll bounce around a little bit here. The effects of the Super Bowl's coming. But what's interesting is it's not like San Francisco needs any more publicity, right? In terms of, and we all love good publicity no matter where we are. But my gosh, I mean, with high tech and the beautiful, the city has so much to offer. It's just so much. I mean, there's so much. We go on and on. But have you started to see some of the effects? And maybe it's going to take a week or so, but really see what the community is going to, really turn into in the next week or so because of the Super Bowl, A, and then B, My guess is, believe it or not, there will be some people that come to visit. They'll be the first time they may be visiting this area, right? I mean, it's hard to believe for you and I, but that's going to happen.
It's an interesting dilemma to have, right? I have the good fortune of living in one of the truly most beautiful places in the world, and I should feel psyched and excited to share that with everyone. And then they show up, and I'm like, oh, please leave. You've ruined traffic and this and that. But leave your money, right? We'll take your tax dollars,
right.
Sales tax dollars. We love we love all of that. So It's one of those things. I mean, I think football in general is a sore topic in San Francisco right now. We're still not quite sure where the new stadium is. At least I'm not, because that's 2 counties away or something. I'm like, whoa, we crossed the city line. And it wasn't exactly the 49ers' best season. And so then, of course,
very good point.
You've got the championship kind of to rub salt in the wound.
Yeah, it's that's true, and it's interesting. Just from a viewer consumer perspective, you have the stadium here in Santa Clara, but yet most of the activities are taking place up in San Francisco. Right,
Super Bowl City is in the city, right in front of the Ferry Building. But I guess when New York hosted the Super Bowl, it was kind of the same thing. The stadium was definitely not in Manhattan.
Right,
I can tell you that much.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Especially again since Silicon Valley and San Francisco, I think for most business-related people or people that travel, certainly San Francisco is a destination spot for sure, one of the best in the world. But it'll be interesting to see how the dynamics shape up and over the next couple of weeks when it comes to that. So if you're just tuning in, we're going to take our first break here in a bit, but I am visited for the entire hour in the studio by Matt Fuller. He's with San Francisco Modern Condos team at Zephyr Real Estate, and we're going to be talking about a little more on real estate in general. Specifically, we're going to get into some of the condos, the high-rise. What is the makeup of the building going to be looking like in San Francisco over the next several years, and much, much more. So if you have any questions for Matt, 1-800-516-1220, or you could always text the live text line, 408-838-9060. This is Joe Cucchiara with Real Estate Radio. Talking about San Francisco market in general, we're going to get into condominiums now, which Matt specializes in as part of his real estate business, and much more. If you have any questions, 408-838-9060. Again, 408-838-9060. Matt, let's talk a little bit about this, to kind of dig in deep with the condo market. Maybe give us a little update on what's going on in terms of condos. I mean, I'm guessing that we're still paying catch up. We mentioned in the earlier segment. Do you see, and I don't want to assume, but that is just where the growth is going to be for the future, is the vertical growth in San Francisco?
Yeah, there's really no other direction to go until there's another act of God. And let's not assume or hope or plan or want that. Let's figure this out ourselves and not rely on anyone. But yeah, in terms of what San Francisco is building, it's essentially all condominium. There's one development in the city right now that is offering quote unquote single family homes. They are fully detached, but they still have CC&Rs that run with the neighborhood and a monthly HOA fee. So it is a planned unit development, a PUD, and everything that's being built. The days of empty lots and just, hey, I'm going to put 20 houses down. Those days are gone. And so that's one of the things that we've seen driving prices in the single family market is yes, they're old, wood framed. They may have their challenges. Let's go with interesting layouts. Yeah. But we're not making any more of them. And again, it's that simple supply and demand thing. If there's no more supply, there's always going to be demand. Yeah. But even with that, with condos, condos make a lot more sense in terms of our square footage. Our layouts are small. Even our typical kind of sunset house is a 2-1. It's not like the 3-2 rancher in suburbia. And that's because we live in a city. Yeah. It's okay for it to be small because our neighborhood is our living room. The point of living there is to be around people and to be out. Right. So we're okay with a little less space. And the best way we can do that, kind of the most efficient use, and really the most hospitable neighborhood we can design under current thinking is something that's going to have ground floor active use with residences above. You know, and it's kind of like everything old is new again. If you go back to New York or any of the large cities or Europe, 200, 300 years ago, it was like, hey, ground floor retail with houses above.
Yeah. So I'm guessing maybe give a range for those that either are or maybe think they're familiar, or maybe are not familiar with San Francisco. If a person was looking to buy a second home or live there, primary residence or whatever, what price ranges maybe take us through your average maybe on the low end versus what you could get on the high end in the condo market these days in the city? Yeah,
and kind of on the high end, however much money you have, we'll make something that fits. There's actually some incredibly amazing high-end projects that are happening right now. There's a couple. There's some really nice just other projects as well. But in general, if we're talking kind of a two-bedroom in one of the newer buildings and kind of one of our sunnier kind of central, southeast neighborhoods, you're going to look at between $1.2 million and $1.5 million for a two-bedroom. And that two-bedroom is going to be, 900 to 1,200 square feet ish. If you want to go with kind of just back-of-the-envelope math, resale condos, not brand new, have been around for a couple of years, call it $950 a square foot is the citywide average. Brand new construction right now, the citywide average is about $1,250 a square foot, so there's about a $300 a square foot delta there. And then kind of within that, you've got enormous ranges. Lumina is a new development that Polaris Pacific is selling. And, they started out when they started selling, a year ago, down at the, some of their first homes went for around $1,000 a square foot, 12 to 1,500 was very typical. At this point, folks that are walking in the sales office for the first time aren't seeing prices anywhere that low. So there's definitely a range. Then if we're talking about one bedrooms, it's comfortably $800,000. You can find some choices in the sevens. Every now and again, there's a couple $600,000 projects, but those tend to go fairly quickly. Or you're going to kind of look at your more outer neighborhoods that are away from transit and kind of the things we think of as San Francisco.
All right, we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, much, much more with Matt Fuller. Do you have any questions about San Francisco, the city, condos, Super Bowl? The expert's here. He'll answer them all. Joe Cucchiara with Real Estate Radio Live, 1-800-516-1220. And also condo market specifically. Talked a little bit about the Super Bowl. Anything you want to talk about, give us a call or check in, 408-838-9060. And ask if you'd like. Also, remember to download the podcast at reradiolive.com. What I wanted to ask, Matt, is that on these high-rise projects in these, now, do the builders, do they typically contact the real estate firms, or do they have sales and marketing teams that go out and then contact someone like yourself and say, hey, listen, or is that mostly, how do they decide who represents a lot of this growth in terms of who's actually selling these new high-rise?
Yeah, and my team doesn't represent any of the developers of these high-rises. We work with buyers that are interested in them. It's a very special sales kind of cycle and skill to work with new development because of the kind of pipeline and planning, and it's you've got 60 houses to sell in a month, and it's a very kind of specialized process, and there's two companies in San Francisco that really specialize in it. Polaris Pacific, which has its roots actually in Zephyr Real Estate. A lot of folks that started Polaris Pacific came from Zephyr, and then there's the Mark Company.
I know
Alan
them well.
Mark, and the Mark Company was just acquired by Pacific Union.
They were
at the end of last year.
Wow!
So I guess now we have Polaris Pacific and the Pacific Union.
Yeah, I got to know Alan pretty well. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, they really kind of those two groups, Chris Foley at Polaris Pacific and then Alan Mark Company, really do, I would say, 98% of the new construction representation for the developers. A couple of the developers, like Bosa, which did a couple of the Mission Bay buildings, worked with the Merck Company, but the staff were actually Bosa employees, so that's a model we've seen sometimes, but typically it's Polaris Pacific or the Mark Co.
I'm going to give the information out towards the end of the show, too, but I want to make sure. So if anybody's interested in contacting you, or your team about condos or any kind of thing about real estate in terms of San Francisco, or want to find out more about what you do, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. www.sfmoderncondos.com is one of our websites, and jacksonfuller.com is the other. We've got pages on Facebook, on Instagram, so a quick Google search for those terms will typically find us. And
you guys do a great job at blogging.
Yes, thank you.
You really do.
Thank you.
Yeah, we read some of the stuff before coming on the show, and I'm very impressed. So if they want to follow the blog, is that the website also? Go to that, or what's the best place to?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So they have two separate blogs. I try to kind of focus on condos and condo questions on the SF Modern Condo side, and a little more on single families and neighborhoods at Jackson Fuller.
Very good, very good. All right, so what about the future of, let's talk a little bit about San Francisco. We have this building. We're talking about playing catch-up. Do you see continued growth? Obviously, the vertical growth, you see, that's pretty usual. And then I'm also hearing a lot about, I work with some commercial real estate agents talking about, a lot of their customers now are looking to Oakland or maybe Berkeley and some other locations because to a certain extent San Francisco is becoming, even though a lot of companies want to be in San Francisco for obvious reasons, sometimes it's becoming prohibitive because of cost and maybe just parking and the logistics, I would say. If you have a company, if you're just starting a company and you have hundreds or thousands of people that are trying to get in and out, I mean, it's a tough call, isn't it?
A lot of the job creation seems to be happening kind of like slightly outside of the city, where there is space for it. But even where it's happening there, you have CEOs talking about concerns around affordability, like what Facebook is proposing. I think like paying people to live near their campus so that they won't commute as much. And, so you're hearing kind of some interesting ideas. It's very much not just a San Francisco problem at this point. It's a regional problem. Yeah. And, one of the metaphors I've used sometimes is you can kind of think of it as like a nuclear reactor. And if a nuclear reactor overheats, it's the core that gets the hottest and the other areas that will heat up fastly. But when the core cools down, it comes back to a normal temperature, but everything around it gets much colder kind of much more quickly. And we saw this in the last cycle, So San Francisco, 2011, 2012, our peak drop from 2007 to 2008 was 25-30%, depending on your neighborhood location. Whereas, across the bridge or up towards Sacramento, we're talking about, people buying houses for $400,000 and selling them for $100,000. So we see this every time San Francisco heats up. Everyone immediately crosses a bridge or whatever to find some land that's less expensive. And I think what's slightly different this time is the psychology is because, while we're all kind of thinking, this is unsustainable, we're not going to see 20% appreciation year over year over year over year over year over year because let's leave it, we aren't. There's nothing that's super predictive or says like, here comes your landing or kind of like, here comes a soft landing. I mean, I think that really the ideal at least from a stability point of view, is kind of coming into a plateau where we're seeing these prices stabilize around these. And unfortunately, from an affordability standpoint, we're talking about $1,000, $1,200 being the new normal, and slowly using that as your new baseline and going from there. Or are we going to see some kind of, major psychological shift? Will we have one of the Valley's unicorns go under and suddenly everyone's like, oh, it's a bubble, it's exploded, we're all leaving and going to the next place. But even when you have that dynamic happening around employment, our market is so desirable to overseas buyers who have no care in the world about any of that. The local economy, the schools, or the grocery store is, they don't care. The only thing they're doing is parking their money in the condo, right? That's why they're interested in it.
No, I totally agree. This is a unique place. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah, the business certainly helps drive the property prices, the infrastructure, all the stuff that's going on. But this is one of the best places to live in the world, as far as I'm concerned.
Don't tell anyone that.
Oops, I shouldn't have said that.
Thank you for just making our housing crisis even worse, Joe.
With that, though. The question is, well, I'll set it up. We'll ask you on the last side because I want to talk to you a little about what you think about this so-called bubble. Is there such a thing again? Is it anything unlike we went through, back several years ago? So when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about that, and we'll finish up the show. So we're going to take another quick break, our last break. Our sponsors that day will be Alon Pinnell will be with us. Their executive team will be interviewing them on the show, and then we have a mixer from 4 to 6, expecting well over 100 people, and be fun, be a good time. So come out and join us. That's a week from today, February 2nd. For more information, you can go to reradiolive.com. Just finished the show here with Matt Fuller. He's with San Francisco Modern Condos team at Zephyr Real Estate, kind enough to spend the hour with us, sharing his experience and knowledge in real estate in general, but specifically to San Francisco. So, Matt, what do you say about the bubble? We all are familiar with the mortgage meltdown. I'm in that business myself, so I understand the reason why all that money. We don't need to go into all that, but how do you? Is there any relationship to that to where we are today, and how do you see the market here over the next couple of years?
Yeah, that's a great question. The market. I don't want to say we're in uncharted territory, right? Or we're just in kind of new price points, but we're just in an upcycle. Every upcycle will at some point have a correction. What that correction looks like and when we have it is impossible to say. And is it really a correction, or is it just part of the cycle?
Yeah.
So we're not going to build enough houses. San Francisco, we didn't get in this position overnight, and we're not going to get out of it overnight. I guess the more important question, or the question I always ask my buyers, is what's your holding time frame, right? If you're looking to get in and get out in 3 to 5 years, I think at this point that's a really risky proposition. But if you're telling me that you'd like to live here and then maybe rent it out someday down the road, or you're thinking you're going to be here for 10 years or a longer holding period, then what the current price is today is. I'm not going to say irrelevant, but where you're buying in the cycle is a little less important because you've got a lot of time to make it up. And every time we go through the cycle, yes, we adjust and we come out and go through another one, and prices end up even higher. So the very long-term, prediction for housing prices is really clear. It's how we get there and the certainty kind of in between. And to that end, we put together we called it the 2016 sales report, and you can go to the website and download it. It actually looks at 40 buildings, because even within San Francisco, there is no market. There's no one market, right? We have our penthouse market. We have our, luxury tower, full amenity. We have our boutique mid-rise buildings where people don't want amenities. We have buildings without doormen because people don't want to talk to people, or we have buildings with doormen because if I can't talk to a person, then it's not really home. So there's kind of a bunch of sub-markets within that. And then, for example, I did 2 posts for the Super Bowl coming up, one looking at a condo and one looking at a single family.
Okay.
The condo is from 1968. It's in the Tenderloin. It's at the Hamilton, 631 O'Farrell.
Okay.
1968, the Tenderloin. The condo was overbid. It listed for $15,950. It sold for $16,500. So even in 1968, real estate was going over asking. But the single family home in Noe Valley actually sold for under asking. It sold for $26,000. But the single family in Noe that sold for $26,000 in 1968 is on the market today by Pete Brown again, Paragon Real Estate, listed for $3,849,000.
Crazy. No, I agree with you 100% in terms of your analogy, and I love the way you talked about the whole long term. Whether what are your strategies? Because I've lived that myself personally. I mean, when I bought in 2005, I was telling you briefly, that was, I think 2007 was kind of the peak of the peak, right? But I bought in 2005, and we could argue again over the last several years after that, if I would have needed to get out or had to get out for some reason, I'd have been in trouble. But here we are again now in 2016, and my house is worth 30% more than I bought it in 2005. But if I would have had to sell or leave, and let's say 10, 11, or 12, it would have been a different story.
And given how many people want to live in San Francisco, what sellers are facing is if I don't get the number I want on the sales side, I can just rent it.
Good point.
And I'll cover my costs and then some. So that's one of the other factors that's driving availability is if I can't get my number, I don't have to sell.
Yeah.
And that's not a typical scenario in a regular real estate market.
Well said. All right, before we duck out here, again, give us your contact information if anybody wants to reach you. Best place to reach you would be?
Absolutely. Team, T-E-A-M, at sfmoderncondos.com if you want to go for email, or www.jacksonfuller.com, www.sfmoderncondos. And if you're old school and you've got a telephone, it's 415-800-2058.
Very good. All right, Matt, I want to thank you for your time. Great show. Got a lot of good information. Be sure to follow him. Good stuff. Great blog. This is Joe Cucchiara with Real Estate Radio Live. Thanks again for tuning in today, and we will be back with you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon.